Do you really believe your thoughts have no power at all? The question echoed in my mind the first time I saw an experiment that shattered every rule I thought I understood. In a silent lab, a beam of light shifted its behavior the moment it was observed. Nothing touched it, only awareness itself. That single observation cracked open the certainty that reality was solid, predictable, separate from mind. What if the world isn't waiting to be discovered, but waiting to be seen into existence? What if consciousness has been shaping matter all along, and skepticism was only the curtain hiding it? In the beginning, light was supposed to be simple, a stream of tiny particles moving in straight lines, obeying the strict rules of matter and motion. Then, in 1801, Thomas Young walked into his laboratory with two narrow slits and an inconvenient curiosity. He wanted to test what light really was. And what he found was not a property of light. It was a riddle about reality itself. When he let the light pass through the two slits, it formed an interference pattern, the kind only waves can make. But when he placed a detector to observe which slit the light went through, the pattern vanished. The wave became a particle. The mere act of watching changed what was happening. Physics had stumbled upon a ghost it couldn't name: consciousness. From that moment, science faced an uncomfortable paradox. The universe behaved one way when unobserved, and another when watched. Observation didn't just reveal reality, it altered it. Yet, instead of asking the forbidden question, who or what is doing the observing, physics chose silence. The mathematical elegance of the equations felt safer than the chaos of consciousness. But imagine for a moment what it means that observation changes outcomes. It means that awareness is not passive. It participates. Each moment of perception is like a small collapse of possibility, an infinite ocean of potential narrowing into one visible event. When you look, the world crystallizes. When you turn away, it dissolves back into probability. This is not a metaphor. In quantum experiments, electrons behave like waves of possibility until measured. Then, in a flash, they choose one position, one identity. The observer effect is not about superstition, it's about interaction. Every observation, every conscious engagement with the world seems to press the universe into a definite shape. Yet for 2 centuries, physics treated consciousness as an inconvenient side effect. It polished the math and ignored the mirror. The deeper truth, that mind and matter are interwoven, was dismissed as mystical because it didn't fit the clean geometry of a purely mechanical world. But the experiments never stopped whispering otherwise. There's a quiet irony here. The very tools we use to separate the observer from the observed have revealed that no such separation exists. The double-slit experiment is not about light anymore. It's about you, your perception, your attention, the subtle act of awareness that transforms the indefinite into the actual. Think of it this way. Consciousness is not looking at the universe, it is looking through it. Every photon, every atom, every pulse of energy carries an implicit question: will you see me? And the moment you do, something in both you and the world changes. Now pause for a second. Look at any object near you. A pen, a shadow, your own hand. Try to notice the exact moment your attention lands on it. That instant of awareness, the slight feeling of knowing that you're seeing, that's the same mechanism that collapses quantum probability into fact. Observation is creation at microscale. Physics tried to bypass this by assuming observation could be done by machines, cameras, sensors, detectors. But those devices don't observe in the conscious sense, they only register. The difference is subtle but crucial. A detector collects data, while consciousness experiences it, and somehow experience itself seems to change what's being experienced. Einstein once complained, "Do you really believe the moon isn't there when you're not looking?" The unsettling answer from quantum theory is, not in the way you think it is. Without observation, the moon, like the electron, exists as a field of probabilities, a superposition of all possible states. Only when perceived does it take the shape we call real. So maybe the question isn't why physics ignored this mystery, but how long it can keep ignoring it. Every discovery since Young, from Heisenberg's uncertainty principle to Wheeler's delayed choice experiment, points to the same disquieting idea. Consciousness and reality are entangled. One does not simply measure the other, they co-create. It's tempting to retreat into the comfort of logic, to say it's all just mathematics, that observation is another word for measurement. But measurement is only a ritual of attention, a coded version of awareness. The mind of the observer and the behavior of matter are bound by an invisible thread, and pulling one always moves the other. So if light behaves differently when watched, what else might shift under the gaze of consciousness? Could thought itself be a form of observation, a wave of awareness collapsing personal probabilities into experience? The question hangs open, inviting its next echo. When consciousness steps into the equation, what happens to the universe that thought it was alone? Somewhere along the way, a single misunderstanding built an invisible wall between science and the human experience. The word observer, so small, so neutral, became detached from what it truly meant. Physicists used it as a placeholder for a machine, a camera, a detector, something cold, impersonal, mechanical. But that substitution carried a silent consequence. It erased us from the equation. When Thomas Young's experiment revealed that observation changed the behavior of light, scientists tried to domesticate the idea. They replaced consciousness with instruments, awareness with measurement, curiosity with circuitry. The human element, the conscious witness, was reduced to a line in an equation. In doing so, we traded mystery for convenience. Yet, no camera has ever observed anything in the true sense of the word. It records without awareness. It collects photons, but it does not know that it is doing so. Consciousness, on the other hand, does something the camera never can. It turns information into experience. It gives meaning, and meaning seems to be the very force that shapes reality. This confusion, equating the observer with a device, is the mistake that keeps us bound to the invisible. It makes us believe that reality is indifferent, that it happens without us, and that we are mere spectators in a pre-written script. But the deeper layers of quantum physics keep whispering the opposite, that the act of perceiving is the act of participating. Imagine standing before a vast ocean at night. The waves move whether or not you look at them, but something shifts the moment your attention rests on the water. The experience changes. The ocean is no longer an abstraction. It becomes alive in your perception, shimmering, infinite, personal. In that subtle exchange between your awareness and the movement of the waves lies the same mystery the early physicists overlooked. Observation is not passive. It's an intimate dialogue between consciousness and creation. For decades, this dialogue was muted by the insistence that the universe must be objective, detached from perception, measurable from the outside. But quantum experiments refuse to fit inside that frame. They keep showing that the boundary between subject and object is not solid. It's fluid, dynamic, responsive. The double-slit experiment, the delayed choice tests, and the quantum eraser setups all point to a single truth. Consciousness matters, whether science is ready to admit it or not. When we stripped the observer of its humanity, we also stripped ourselves of agency. We became data collectors instead of creators. We began to see thought as noise instead of signal, attention as trivial instead of formative. We forgot that what we focus on grows sharper, and what we ignore fades into uncertainty, the same principle the quantum field obeys. Think about how that mistake seeps into daily life. You scroll through your phone without truly seeing, you hear someone's voice without truly listening, you walk past a sunrise without the faintest pulse of awe. Each moment of unconscious observation is like an unmeasured wave, potential unrealized. The world around you exists, but only halfway, waiting for you to bring it fully into being. There's an old saying that energy flows where attention goes. Quantum physics gives that phrase an unexpected legitimacy. When you direct awareness towards something, a decision, a relationship, a possibility, the field reorganizes around it. It's as if the universe leans in, waiting for instruction. But when we confuse observation with mechanical recording, we stop giving those instructions. We let randomness write our story. The irony is that the evidence was never hidden. Even the act of not observing changes outcomes. In experiments where observation is delayed or erased, The results still shift depending on whether the system could have been known. It's as if the universe anticipates consciousness, as though it expects to be seen. So why cling to the old mistake? Because accepting the alternative requires humility. It means the mind is not a bystander, but a participant in the unfolding of reality. It means responsibility, not in the moral sense, but in the creative one. If your thoughts and perceptions truly touch the quantum fabric, then every moment of awareness is an act of authorship. Perhaps the real invisible prison is the belief that consciousness is irrelevant. That belief blinds us to our own creative potential. The camera will never change what it films, but your perception does, in every instant, every glance, every thought that lingers long enough to take form. And once you begin to sense that your awareness is not observing from the outside but within the system itself, a new possibility emerges, one where the universe is not an indifferent mechanism, but a responsive field, alive to the frequencies of your attention. Which brings us to the inevitable question: if consciousness truly interacts with matter, what happens when it does so with intention, when it stops observing passively and starts shaping reality deliberately? The moment consciousness steps into the equation, the rules bend. What once appeared fixed begins to ripple, like a reflection trembling in water. Suddenly, the universe no longer feels like a distant stage. It feels alive, responsive, almost aware of being seen. The machinery of existence softens into something fluid, something that listens. Quantum physics quietly hinted at this for decades. Every observation collapses a wave of probabilities into a single event. But when you start to see thoughts as waves, real, measurable vibrations in the quantum field, a deeper implication surfaces. Your mind is not just watching reality unfold, it is sending ripples into it. Each emotion, each focus of attention becomes a kind of interference pattern shaping what comes next. Imagine for a moment that every thought you have emits a resonance, the way a string vibrates when plucked. Around you, infinite possibilities hum like invisible chords, futures not yet chosen, outcomes not yet fixed. When your consciousness aligns with a clear intention, those vibrations begin to interfere constructively, amplifying the probability of a specific outcome. The field listens to coherence. This is not mystical wishful thinking. It's resonance physics. A chaotic signal produces noise. A coherent one organizes energy. The same principle that allows lasers to cut through steel, waves in perfect phase, is mirrored in the human mind when thought and emotion synchronize. When consciousness achieves coherence, reality begins to rearrange around it with surprising precision. You've felt traces of this before. The day everything seemed to flow effortlessly, conversations aligning, timing unfolding perfectly, small coincidences piling up as if something were choreographing your path. That state of effortless harmony isn't luck. It's coherence between mind and field. It's consciousness entering the game fully, no longer fragmented, no longer doubting its influence. But most of the time, our inner signal is noisy. Conflicting thoughts cancel each other out, like waves out of phase. We wish for one thing but believe another. We imagine abundance while rehearsing fear. The result is interference, a scattered field, a fogged mirror. Reality reflects not our desires, but our dominant frequency of attention. Consider a simple experiment in your own perception. Close your eyes and think of someone you love deeply. As you hold their image, notice how your body subtly reorganizes. Breathing slows, tension releases, the mind becomes quieter. What's happening inside you is measurable. Coherence between the heart's electromagnetic field and brainwave rhythms increases. The system moves from noise to order. That shift is not symbolic, it's physical. And the moment it happens, the world outside begins to echo that order. Quantum physics doesn't explain why consciousness has this power, only that it seems inseparable from the events it measures. The double-slit experiment, the observer effect, the entanglement principle, all are different languages describing the same truth. Awareness changes probability into experience. When consciousness enters the game intentionally, observation becomes creation. You are no longer recording reality, you are selecting it, not through control, but through resonance. the alignment of your internal state with a specific frequency of possibility. This isn't about forcing outcomes. Force operates from separation, from the illusion that the universe is something out there to be managed. Coherence arises from participation, from remembering that you and the universe are playing the same melody. When your thought, emotion, and action vibrate in harmony, the field cannot help but respond. Imagine consciousness as a tuning fork in a vast orchestra of potential. The clearer your tone, the more the surrounding strings begin to resonate with it. That's why clear intention feels effortless. It doesn't push, it harmonizes. It doesn't fight the flow of probability. It chooses a current and merges with it. Science has begun to glimpse this at the edge of neuroscience and quantum biology. Studies of microtubules within neurons, heart-brain synchronization, and placebo phenomena all hint at the same underlying mechanism: consciousness organizing matter through coherence. It's not a metaphor anymore. It's the next frontier of physics meeting awareness. If thought is vibration and the universe is a responsive field, then intention is not imagination, it's calibration. You are constantly tuning your inner frequency through the quality of your attention. Chaos outside often mirrors chaos within. When consciousness enters the game coherently, the external begins to follow that rhythm. People appear at the right time, opportunities align, uncertainty starts to move with intelligence rather than against it. Perhaps this is what the mystics meant all along when they said, "As within, so without." Not as poetry, but as physics. When consciousness participates, the boundary between observer and observed fades. Life ceases to be something happening to you and starts becoming something happening through you. And yet this realization raises a deeper question, one that can't be answered by theory alone. If consciousness can align reality through coherence, what happens when that coherence extends beyond a single mind? What occurs when many minds synchronize, when awareness becomes collective and the field begins to act as one? There are moments when science quietly touches something ancient, not with incense or prayer, but with mathematics that trembles at its own implications. One such moment came from the very man who gave us the foundation of quantum theory, Max Planck. After a lifetime studying the subatomic world, he said words that should have shattered the walls of materialism forever. Consciousness is fundamental. Matter originates from consciousness. Most people read that and move on, but pause for a moment. The father of quantum physics didn't say that consciousness arises from matter. He said the opposite. He implied that awareness is not the final byproduct of the brain. It is the source code from which the brain and everything else is written. That sentence collapses centuries of logic, built on the idea that matter came first. For generations, we've been told the universe began as inert dust, and through chance and chemistry, awareness somehow sparked. But if Planck's insight is true, then consciousness wasn't born in the universe. The universe was born within consciousness. Matter didn't produce mind. Mind condensed into matter. Think about how this reverses everything we were taught to believe. The brain is no longer the generator of experience. It's a receiver, a sophisticated tuning device decoding frequencies of consciousness. Your thoughts aren't flickers of neurons, they're modulations of a deeper field. What you call you is consciousness folding itself into form to experience its own reflection. When you begin to look at reality through this lens, logic trembles. The walls between science and spirituality start to blur, not because belief replaces reason, but because the deeper you study the physical world, the more it behaves like thought. Energy responds to observation. Probabilities collapse under awareness. Time itself becomes elastic when perception shifts. Planck's statement isn't poetry, it's physics refusing to remain mechanical. And though the academic world often avoids its full implications, they ripple everywhere. In the way quantum entanglement defies locality, in the way vacuum fields generate something from nothing, in the way observation organizes chaos into coherence. Each experiment hints at the same pattern. Behind all form lies a field that knows. Imagine for a moment that consciousness is not a personal possession, but a universal ocean. Each of us, each living being, is a localized whirlpool in that sea, a temporary configuration of awareness. When the whirlpool fades, the water doesn't disappear, it simply returns to the greater flow. In this view, death is not an end, just a redistribution of awareness. Life and matter are waves rising and falling on the same conscious surface. If that sounds metaphysical, remember that quantum mechanics already requires us to abandon the classical idea of separateness. Entangled particles behave as one system, even when light years apart. Their states are connected instantaneously, as if space and time are just shadows cast by something deeper. Planck's insight provides the missing piece. What connects them is consciousness itself, not human consciousness specifically, but the fundamental awareness that precedes form. From this perspective, your thoughts are not locked inside your skull. They are ripples moving through the same field that shapes galaxies. When you think, you are not producing something private. You are participating in the evolution of a universal mind. Every act of attention sends information into the field, altering its structure, just as a single note changes the resonance of an entire symphony. And here lies the revelation that shakes logic to its core. If consciousness is the foundation of everything, then reality is not out there. It's a projection of the inner field. What you see as external is consciousness perceiving itself through different angles, the observer and the observed being two sides of the same awareness. That's why mystics, across cultures and centuries, reach the same conclusion through entirely different paths. The universe is one conscious entity exploring its own possibilities. The scientist in the lab and the monk in meditation are touching the same truth from opposite directions. But this understanding carries a quiet challenge. If consciousness creates matter, then every thought, belief, and emotion carries the architecture of creation. The world you inhabit is not separate from your inner state. It mirrors it. Every act of perception is a creative gesture, shaping the field into experience. The shift from logic to awareness is not an abandonment of reason. It's its expansion. Logic describes what already exists. Consciousness decides what can. And once that is understood, the boundaries of what's real begin to dissolve. Now think of what happens when you look at someone you love. That recognition, that spark. What if it's not just emotion, but the universe recognizing itself in another form? Consciousness meeting consciousness, remembering its unity through the illusion of separation. Planck's revelation is not an abstract theory. It's an invitation to participate differently. To realize that the act of being aware is not observing life from a distance, but generating it from within. And yet, as unsettling as this truth is, science has largely chosen silence. For if we admit that consciousness is fundamental, we must also admit that power does not belong to the equations or the instruments. It belongs to awareness itself. Which leads naturally to the next unspoken question. If science has seen this truth but refuses to say it aloud, what else has it chosen not to see? For more than a century, science has stood at the edge of a revelation it refuses to name. The experiments are there, undeniable, reproducible, meticulously documented, and yet the deeper implication remains swept beneath the carpet of convention. It is not that scientists don't see it. It's that acknowledging it would rewrite the story of what it means to be human. Consciousness has always been the inconvenient guest in the house of physics. Every time it knocks, the door opens just enough to glimpse the mystery, then slams shut again. The observer effect, quantum entanglement, non-locality, each one hints that awareness and matter are entwined, but the language of academia prefers precision without presence, measurement without meaning. It has built an entire discipline around the comfort of separation. Admitting that consciousness plays a role in shaping reality would dissolve that boundary. It would mean that the scientist in the lab is not an impartial witness, but a participant in the phenomenon being measured. It would mean that objectivity is not the absence of bias, but the illusion of it. And for an establishment that prides itself on detachment, that idea is destabilizing. Yet beneath the equations, the silence grows louder. Even Einstein, who rejected the idea of quantum randomness, confessed that the field is the only reality. Later, thinkers like Wigner and von Neumann openly proposed that consciousness collapses the wave function. These weren't mystics in robes. They were the architects of modern physics, whispering the same forbidden thought. The mind is not outside the equation. Still, the system turned away. Textbooks streamlined the story, cutting consciousness out of the narrative, as if it were a superstition contaminating the purity of numbers. A century later, students learn about wave-particle duality without ever hearing that observation itself alters the result. The data remains, but the meaning has been exiled. Why? Because meaning threatens control. If the mind creates measurable effects, then the world is not governed solely by external laws. It responds to participation. That realization redistributes power. It shifts authority from the laboratory to the individual, from the hierarchy of experts to the intimacy of direct experience. And institutions, whether scientific or religious, rarely welcome ideas that dissolve their centrality. The irony is that science itself was born from curiosity, from the desire to look without assumption. But somewhere along the way, curiosity hardened into doctrine. To question the material foundation of reality became a kind of heresy. The unspoken rule was clear: you can study matter, but not the source from which matter arises. Consciousness must remain an epiphenomenon, a byproduct, a shadow at best, and yet the cracks keep appearing. Physicists stumble upon anomalies that make no sense in a purely material framework: spontaneous order, coherence across vast distances, observer-dependent outcomes. Neuroscience faces its own version of the paradox, the hard problem of how subjective experience emerges from electrochemical activity. No equation has bridged that gap, because the gap itself may be an illusion created by looking from the wrong direction. You can feel that tension even in the way scientists speak when the cameras are off. They confess that the math works, but the picture it paints feels incomplete. Something essential is missing: the dimension of experience itself. They stand before the quantum field like explorers, staring at an ocean they can describe but not touch. Perhaps that's why the silence persists, not from ignorance, but from fear. Fear of ridicule, of losing grants, of stepping beyond the boundary that separates the respectable from the speculative. So the conversation remains encoded, wrapped in cautious language, buried in technical footnotes. But beneath the surface, the question keeps pulsing. What if consciousness is not an effect but a cause? Every civilization has faced a moment when its framework of knowledge outgrew its comfort zone. The Earth wasn't the center of the universe, though admitting that once seemed blasphemous. Life didn't emerge from static perfection, though evolution once sounded absurd. And now, perhaps, we face the next paradigm shift: the realization that mind is not confined to biology, but woven into the very structure of reality. If that is true, then silence is no longer neutrality. It's participation in forgetting. Each time science dismisses the question of consciousness, it reinforces the illusion that humans are victims of a mechanical universe. But what if the opposite is true? What if we are its authors, unaware of our own pen? The field of awareness doesn't wait for validation. It continues to respond, in synchronicities, in intuition, in the strange resonance that connects thoughts and events. You might call it coincidence. Quantum physics might call it correlation. Either way, the pattern persists. The universe seems to notice us noticing it. And maybe that is why this silence can't last forever. Eventually, the data will speak louder than dogma. The evidence will demand a new language, one that reunites measurement with meaning, observer with observed. Because when the mind is finally recognized as part of the experiment, the next question becomes inevitable. If consciousness interacts with the field, could it also connect consciousnesses together, linking minds, moments, and events in ways we once mistook for chance? You've experienced it, that moment when reality feels like it's eavesdropping on your thoughts. You think of someone you haven't spoken to in years, and seconds later, their name lights up your phone. You decide to take a different route home, and by doing so you avoid an accident you couldn't have predicted. You hum a song in your head, and it begins to play from a passing car. You pause, call it coincidence, and move on. But what if it isn't? Physics has a word for what may lie beneath these events: entanglement. Two particles, once connected, remain linked regardless of distance. Change the state of one, and the other shifts instantly, faster than light could ever travel. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance, but the spookiness fades when you realize it may not be limited to particles. What if consciousness itself is entangled across the field, connecting minds, events, and possibilities in ways our senses can't yet measure? The ancient mystics said, "Everything is connected." Quantum theory simply gave the statement a mathematical backbone. The field that underlies all matter, the quantum vacuum, doesn't separate things, it unites them. Every particle emerges from it and dissolves back into it. If consciousness is woven into that same fabric, then each mind is not an island, but a node within a single living network. What we call coincidence might just be the mind recognizing its own reflection in the field. Consider how information travels in ways we can't yet explain. Studies on intuition, telepathic connection, even heart-brain synchronization between individuals suggest that emotion and focus transmit patterns beyond physical contact. When one person feels a strong emotion, subtle changes occur in the electromagnetic fields measurable around them, and nearby systems respond. We don't yet have the instruments to fully decode this communication, but the signal is there, faint yet consistent. The truth may be that consciousness doesn't just occupy space, it extends through it. Your thoughts are not confined to your skull any more than a melody is confined to the strings of a violin. They resonate outward, interacting with the field, brushing against other minds, sometimes forming harmonies that we interpret as coincidence. Think about the moments when you sense someone's gaze before turning your head, or when a friend finishes your sentence before you speak. These events may not be supernatural. They may simply be instances where entanglement becomes visible in human experience. The more emotionally charged the connection, the stronger the bridge between consciousnesses. Love, fear, intention. These are not abstractions, but forms of energy that tune the frequencies between minds. Quantum biology hints at this on a microscopic scale. Processes like photosynthesis, navigation in migratory birds, and even smell rely on quantum coherence, states of alignment and instant communication between molecules. If such coordination occurs in cells, why not in consciousness? After all, your brain is a quantum system too, with particles constantly interacting in ways that defy classical predictability. The same field that links atoms may very well link awareness itself, but the world rarely teaches us to see it that way. We're trained to treat coincidences as accidents, because acknowledging pattern implies participation. To say that was just coincidence is to protect the illusion of randomness, the comfort of believing that the universe doesn't listen. Yet the evidence of lived experience contradicts it. When you begin to pay attention, the so-called coincidences increase. Reality becomes conversational. It starts responding to the tone of your awareness. You can test this quietly. Spend a single day noticing the subtle alignments, the way a phrase you needed to hear appears in a stranger's conversation, the way timing seems to orchestrate itself with your thoughts. Write them down, not to prove anything, but to observe. Soon you'll realize the pattern was always there. It's your attention that brought it into focus. In truth, coincidence is what coherence looks like when you're not expecting it. When consciousness aligns with itself across space and time, events conspire to mirror that unity. What we call synchronicity is the field revealing its hidden architecture, consciousness recognizing itself through form. And the more aware you become, the faster these echoes appear. It's not that the universe starts responding differently, it's that you begin to perceive its responses. Awareness fine-tunes perception, and perception fine-tunes reality. This loop of recognition, mind meeting matter, observation meeting outcome, is how the invisible becomes visible. Some scientists now suspect that entanglement might not fade with distance at all, that everything, from subatomic particles to galaxies, remains threaded through the same instantaneous fabric. If so, then human connection, intuition, empathy, premonition might simply be the macro expression of a law that operates everywhere, the law of unity disguised as coincidence. The moment you understand that, The small miracles of everyday life no longer feel accidental. They become proof of participation, evidence that you and the universe are in quiet conversation all the time. And that realization naturally leads to the next frontier. If entanglement connects not only particles, but consciousness itself, what does that say about the fabric of existence, about the way every choice, every thought, ripples through the totality of creation? There's a moment when the separate pieces start to merge, when science, experience, and intuition begin to describe the same shape from different angles. It's the moment when connection stops being a metaphor and starts revealing itself as a physical truth. This is the turning point, the realization that everything, from the smallest particle to the largest thought, is woven into one continuous field. Quantum entanglement shattered the idea of isolation. Two particles created together remain linked no matter how far apart they travel. Change one, and the other shifts instantly. No signal, no delay, no intermediary. Space, it seems, is not the barrier we once believed it to be. The universe communicates with itself faster than light, because it isn't sending information through space, it's adjusting within something deeper than space. The whole acts as one organism. What happens at the level of particles, though, doesn't stay there. It scales upward, echoing through biology, consciousness, and even human society. The more we study the natural world, the clearer it becomes. Everything behaves as though it knows about everything else. The flock turns in perfect formation. The cells within your body synchronize without command. The brain's billions of neurons pulse together like a living constellation. Beneath all apparent separation lies an invisible coherence. Imagine the universe as a vast ocean of awareness, each of us a current moving within it. When one current shifts, the rest subtly respond. You can't isolate a single wave without influencing the others, because they're all expressions of the same body of water. In this view, your mind is not floating in the universe. It is the universe, localized and self-aware. Every perception you have, every emotion, every decision, ripples through the totality, adjusting the larger pattern. This interconnectedness isn't sentimental, it's structural. In the quantum field, energy and information are not stored in parts, but in relationships. The universe doesn't contain connection, it is connection. Even what we perceive as emptiness is filled with potential interactions, an invisible lattice vibrating with possibility. The vacuum is not void, it's saturated with intelligence waiting for direction. When consciousness recognizes this, something subtle but irreversible happens. Responsibility replaces randomness. If everything is connected, then every thought matters. Every small act of attention carries weight. The tiniest shift in perspective, choosing compassion over fear, clarity over confusion, reverberates across the web of existence, influencing outcomes beyond your awareness. You're no longer a spectator, but a conductor, tuning your instrument within a cosmic orchestra that's been playing since before time began. It's tempting to reduce connection to philosophy, but the evidence shows up in the everyday. When you sense someone's emotion without words, that's resonance. When entire groups move toward a common idea at once, that's coherence forming in real time. The field that links particles may also link intentions, aligning probabilities so that physical reality begins to echo the inner state of the collective. You can feel this resonance when you're still enough. In moments of presence, when the noise of thought quiets, a sense of belonging emerges, not the kind defined by identity or tribe, but by participation. The body feels less like a boundary and more like a bridge. Breathing becomes an act of synchronization with the world around you. The distinction between inside and outside fades, and perception becomes a single continuous movement. That experience isn't fantasy. It's the nervous system reflecting the underlying physics of unity. Coherence at the level of consciousness feels like peace because, for a moment, your internal field aligns perfectly with the larger one. This alignment is not passive. It reorganizes patterns, dissolves conflict, and draws order from chaos. The same principle that keeps galaxies orbiting applies to the mind. Harmony sustains, separation disintegrates. And perhaps that's why so many breakthroughs, artistic, scientific, or personal, happen in moments of deep connection. When the mind drops its boundaries, creativity flows through effortlessly, as if ideas arrive from somewhere beyond thought. They don't appear from you, they appear through you. The field expresses itself using your awareness as a conduit. If this unity is real, then nothing is truly random. Synchronicity, intuition, and inspiration are not exceptions. They are glimpses of how the universe always operates. Every heartbeat, every decision, every breath participates in the same continuum of awareness. You are not simply connected to everything. You are everything, perceiving itself through the lens of individuality. But such recognition carries a paradox. If all consciousness is one field, then separation, the feeling of being a single, isolated self, must be an illusion. An illusion so convincing that it becomes the stage on which consciousness plays its greatest game, forgetting its unity so it can rediscover it again and again. And that brings the story to its next revelation, a twist that turns skepticism inside out. If consciousness is the source and everything is connected within it, then the hierarchy of creation must invert. It's not that the brain produces awareness, it's that awareness produces the brain. Not that life emerges from matter, but that matter crystallizes from mind. For centuries, we've been trained to see consciousness as an afterthought, a spark that somehow flickered into existence once matter became complex enough to think. The body made the brain made the mind, and the mind was simply the ghost trapped inside a machine of flesh. It sounded logical, predictable, safe. But what if it's the other way around? What if the brain is not the origin of consciousness, but its instrument? What if awareness came first, the silent field from which matter crystallized, the architect rather than the occupant? This is the plot twist that dismantles skepticism, because once it's seen, logic itself begins to bend. Every discovery in quantum physics seems to nudge us toward this reversal. At the smallest scale, matter refuses to behave as solid or stable. Particles exist as probabilities until observed. Energy and information flow in ways that make no sense in a universe made of inert stuff. The observer, the act of awareness, seems to shape the outcome, as if consciousness were the hidden variable behind everything physical. The old model, that the brain produces consciousness, is starting to sound like saying a radio creates the music it plays. The circuits are essential, yes, but they don't generate the signal. They decode and express it. Damage the radio and the sound distorts, but the broadcast itself remains untouched. Likewise, when brain activity changes, perception changes, but the field of consciousness, the source of awareness itself, continues beyond the instrument. This inversion terrifies materialism because it flips the hierarchy of existence. Instead of humans being the accidental byproduct of a blind universe, the universe itself becomes a manifestation of awareness exploring its own depths. Space, time, and matter are not the foundation. They're the interface. Consciousness is not inside the universe is inside consciousness. Think of it like this. When you dream, entire landscapes, people, and stories unfold within your mind. From within the dream, those worlds seem external and objective. Yet upon waking, you realize everything, but every tree, every sky, every word spoken was happening inside awareness. Now imagine that waking life is a larger dream, a field of shared consciousness, where awareness localizes itself into billions of perspectives, each believing it's separate. Even some neuroscientists are beginning to suspect that consciousness may be primary. The hard problem, how subjective experience arises from matter, has no satisfying answer in the old framework. You can measure brain waves, map neural networks, identify chemical reactions, but none of that explains why experience exists at all. Why should a collection of atoms ever feel? Why should molecules think, dream, love, fear? The simplest answer may be the one science fears most, because consciousness was here first. When you see this, skepticism starts to crack. The skeptic asks, "Show me proof that consciousness precedes matter." But every observation, every measurement, every perception is consciousness in action. The proof is not outside you, it's the very act of asking the question. Without awareness, no experiment could exist. Without observation, nothing would collapse into form. The skeptic's doubt itself depends on the very consciousness they deny. This realization doesn't make logic irrelevant, it makes logic part of a larger intelligence. The brain's reasoning is like a lens, useful for focusing attention, but blind to the field from which attention arises. That's why even the most brilliant analysis can't grasp consciousness. The tool is trying to measure the hand that holds it. It's possible that the ancient mystics were describing this same inversion long before physics had the language to prove it. They said the world is Maya, illusion, not because it's fake, but because it's a projection of mind. In modern terms, we might say reality is a holographic field, each point containing the whole, consciousness reflecting itself infinitely through structure. The illusion isn't the world itself, it's the belief that you're separate from it. The implications reach far beyond philosophy. If consciousness creates matter, then everything you experience is the universe responding to its own inner state. Your thoughts and perceptions don't just interpret reality, they sculpt it. You're not standing in front of the cosmos as a spectator. You are the cosmos observing itself through the lens of your individuality. Every insight, every heartbeat, every moment of awareness is the infinite meeting itself in a finite form. This is where skepticism dissolves, not in surrender, but in recognition. The rational mind finally sees that what it was searching for has been the one doing the searching. The universe is self-aware, not metaphorically, but literally. You are the vantage point through which it sees, thinks, and dreams. And once that truth begins to settle, another question naturally arises, one that no equation alone can answer. If the universe is conscious of itself through you, then who, exactly, is the one that's watching the watcher? Close your eyes. Before you search for evidence in theories or equations, look at the only laboratory that has ever truly existed, the one within you. Breathe once, without forcing anything. Then notice something subtle but undeniable. You are aware of the breath. You are not the air, not the movement of your chest, not even the thought I'm breathing. You are the awareness of it. Now, watch the next thought that appears. Maybe it's about this exercise, maybe it's something random. Don't chase it, just observe it rising, existing for a moment, then fading. The question that follows is the one that undoes centuries of confusion. Who is watching that? That silent witness behind every sensation, behind every idea. That's consciousness itself. It doesn't move, yet it allows movement. It doesn't think, yet thought happens within it. It has no color, no sound, no form, but everything you have ever experienced unfolds inside it. It's the one thing you can never see, because it is what's doing the seeing. And that's where the universe decides what becomes real. If quantum physics showed us anything, it's that observation changes the outcome. A photon behaves like a wave of infinite possibility until it's measured. Then, in an instant, it takes on a definite form. That experiment isn't happening only in distant laboratories, it's happening in you right now. Each moment of awareness collapses countless potential versions of experience into the single, vivid, now you are perceiving. You may think this awareness is personal, yours alone, contained behind your eyes. But when you look closely, the boundaries blur. The same consciousness that sees through your eyes is the one perceiving through every other. It doesn't multiply. It localizes. It appears as many, but it's one field watching itself from billions of points of view. When you sense that, even briefly, the illusion of separation begins to soften. Try a simple observation. Focus on the space between thoughts. The mind will resist, it's addicted to movement. But even for a second, there's a gap, a silence that isn't empty but alive. That silence is not absence, it's presence before form. It's the quantum field of your own awareness. When you rest there, time loosens. The story of you becomes transparent, and what remains is consciousness, vast, clear, unbound. This is not imagination, it's direct perception. The same clarity the mystics called awakening, the same paradox quantum theory stumbled into. The observer and the observed are one. You are not looking at reality. You are reality looking at itself. In that recognition, something extraordinary happens. The border between inner and outer dissolves. You begin to feel that the tree outside, the hum of electricity, the pulse of your heart, are not separate events, but extensions of a single vibration. You can sense how thoughts influence the texture of the moment, how emotion shapes what appears next. You start to notice that reality is not static. It's responsive, almost playful, mirroring the tone of your awareness like light bouncing off water. And when that awareness turns inward, a deeper understanding dawns. Nothing you perceive has ever been outside of you. Every sound, every color, every sensation, all of it has always occurred within consciousness. Even space itself is an appearance in the mind. The stars you gaze at are not light years away in the absolute sense. They are right here, arising in awareness. The universe is not out there. It's unfolding in the same field that's reading these words right now. This experience doesn't need belief. It doesn't belong to any religion or philosophy. It's self-evident once you notice it. The proof of consciousness as the foundation of reality is that it cannot be removed. You can subtract every object, every sound, even every thought, and what remains is awareness, untouched, unchanging, infinite. You cannot step outside of it because you are it. That's why every spiritual tradition, in its own language, pointed back to this moment of direct recognition. When the noise of thought fades, what's left isn't emptiness. It's fullness, the living intelligence that gives rise to everything. And once you taste even a hint of it, your relationship with reality shifts. You stop trying to control the world because you realize you are made of the same essence that moves it. The world will still appear the same. Trees, cities, faces, time, but it won't feel the same. You'll sense a quiet dialogue between consciousness and creation, an intimacy that no equation can capture. The mind, once obsessed with proving, relaxes into knowing. And as this recognition deepens, another truth begins to unfold naturally, one that doesn't end in words or theories, but in transformation. If consciousness is the force through which reality takes form, then belief itself is no longer a concept, it's participation. The universe isn't asking you to understand it, it's inviting you to remember that you've been creating it all along. In the end, this was never about convincing you to believe in quantum consciousness. It was about helping you remember that you've always been part of it. The universe is not a stage where you stand apart from creation. It's a living mirror, responding to the gaze of awareness itself. Every thought, every emotion, every act of attention shapes the field you call reality. You are not small observing the infinite, you are the infinite observing itself in form. If you felt something awaken while listening, write in the comments, "I am the observer and the observed." That's how I'll know you reached this point of the journey. And if you want to keep exploring this field, where science meets consciousness and logic meets wonder, watch one of the videos now appearing on your screen. Each one continues this conversation with the universe that's been speaking through you all along.